that you believe you're going to dominate here, everything you possibly can until you get to your weight loss goal. You've got to have that slim body mindset. I deserve this one donut. I deserve this one piece of cake. Rubbish. You don't deserve it. What you deserve is a slim body. And unless you feel like you actually deserve a slim body, you're always going to have that backwards rationalization. You're always going to say, oh, I deserve this, because that's what you really think you're worth. So one thing I wish that I knew when I was first getting started with weight loss is that you don't always have to be extreme to get extreme results. Back then I was so coming from this frame, this paradigm of eating less food, of doing more exercise, and if the scale wasn't budging, my immediate strategy was to do one of those two things in increased amounts, increase the intensity, so cut back even more on the food, get rid of those carbohydrates, reduce them more and more and more, okay? Or alternatively, do even more exercise, more frequency, more intensity, more cardio on top of the weight training. That was very much the paradigm I was coming from, and I know that certainly wasn't unique to me. This is what so many weight loss hopefuls are sadly doing. Now what I realize is that it's more about, rather than working hard, it's more about having the right strategy. When I do make a mistake, it's with such indifference that I eat that food that I'm just like, this doesn't tick any boxes for me anymore. And that is not, it might not sound that profound to you, but if you know anything about my story, that is not the Ryan Adams that would have stood before you 6 years ago. Back in my university days as a student, I was a big boredom eater. I had so much time on my hands, and as a result, I'd often turn to food as something to do, as a pick-me-up. And there were nights, and I've spoken about this on my channel, where I'd have a whole medium Domino's pizza, like Mighty Meat or Mighty Supreme, I can never remember the name, Mighty Meteor, maybe something like that, I don't know. And that was the catalyst for these huge sort of binge eating marathons that would last several days. You see, now, last night, I could have a couple of slices of pizza, and that was it for me. Because it didn't do anything for me. I was like, well, that was fine. That was all. I could draw the line under it. Whereas years ago, that pizza from Domino's, I'd have rummaged around for my Ben & Jerry's cookie dough. There were days that, in fact, this was a regular occurrence for almost a year, I would say. In my third year at university, I vividly remember getting Domino's pizza probably on average once a week throughout the academic year. And also, as soon as I'd finished, not half an hour later, not an hour later, as soon as I'd finished the pizza, I'd be in my freezer going through a whole tub of Ben & Jerry's cookie dough, believe it or not, seriously. And that would also then carry over to the next day. I'd then have reminded myself of all these naughty foods, and then the next day I couldn't help but give into temptation too, and it was just a cycle I couldn't break myself out of. And, you know, obviously I'm 40 pounds lighter now, I have a much better relationship with food. And so I think what has really moved the needle for me on this particular subject is that I just no longer see food as a tool. I know it can't do anything for me because I've tried to make it do things for me so many times in the past. I've tried to make it solve my internal problems, realised it doesn't work, and now I'm just kind of cool with that. I'm just like, okay, if I'm feeling bad or if I'm feeling a certain way, I know food's not the answer anymore. And in a similar way, I think this is what so many people are doing, not just as it relates to food, so many weight loss hopefuls, not just as it relates to food though. Maybe it's money, maybe it's Netflix, maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's pornography. They're using these external things to fix and mask these negative feelings when they bubble up inside of them. And this was, for me, my big vice with this was food. It was always food I was turning to many years ago to sort of fill that void or take care of that emotion, or even, on a flip side, a positive emotion such as a reward or pick-me-up. I was using food to try and garner those sorts of feelings and encourage those sorts of feelings. And boy, oh boy, I've now got to the stage where I'm like, yeah, that was silly, and I can eat that pizza like I did last night, and I was totally indifferent. So my advice to you, if you're really struggling with emotional eating, in a similar way to you know, what I've shared here in terms of my story, the big thing that changed the game for me was my default setting has changed. My default setting changed. Years ago, my default setting was this sort of food. Okay, I was an emotional eater, I was eating poorly, I had lots of junk food in my diet. That was my default setting. And to attempt to eat cleanly or healthily was really a facade. It was a facade, and it was always too tough to do because I didn't have the right sort of relationship with food. Whereas now my default setting is to eat these wonderfully healthy plant foods. I love moving my body. I liked exercise back then, but I really love it now. And I just have just a much better relationship in terms of not only what I fuel my body with in terms of the nutrition, but also the way I then relate to that nutrition, how I see it. And so now that's my default setting. And when I do something like I did last night with this, even though it's not the end of the world, it's not the worst thing in the world, I've hit my weight loss goal now, and I'm highlighting this as an example. I'm not really particularly worried about these one-offs. But now that I can draw a line under it. What happened last night, it's like, no, the boundary is clear between what's acceptable, what's unacceptable. And now I had a couple of slices of pizza. It's like, no, bang, back to my default setting. Woke up this morning, had my muesli and fruit with my almond milk, feeling amazing, brilliant. And that's it. So now my default setting has completely changed. So for you just need to get to that point where you stick with a healthy diet for so long that you go over this metaphorical hump and you get to the promised land, like I feel I've arrived at now. And I've been at this for some time, but as I said, it's almost this snowball type effect where it's grown and grown and grown to whereby this is now my default setting. I love doing this, and the more I veer away from this, I snap back very quickly, whereas in years gone by, I would veer and veer. I'd be long gone into the distance before I could even see how to get back to clean eating. So that's what's really changed for me, is my default setting, and that comes with time. Consistency follows commitment. So if you're inconsistent right now, it's very likely that it's down to a lack of commitment. It's very likely that you're only half in as opposed to all in with your weight loss goals, with your nutrition, with your exercise protocols. So how do we start to get committed then? I want to share 3 steps to get committed today. Number 1, you never quit. You don't hop from program to program every time you slip up. You don't jump on the scale one day, perceive that it's a pretty bad weigh-in, which may or may not be correct, and then throw in the towel. You don't quit. You get in this habit of overriding that negative self-talk, policing yourself so you don't quit and you don't give up. And over time, you start to forge this amazing commitment to what you're doing. That's number 1. You never quit. Okay, weight loss failure, I'll say it once again, is a chain of errors. And it's likely that chain of errors started a little while ago. So remember what I said about that maybe earlier. This is really key. It's hard to say no, but when you get in a routine of saying no, it's quite easy. Okay, am I going to do this? Am I going to do this? Okay, am I going to work out? Am I going to stay in and watch Netflix? It's often easy at first to say no because the motivation is high, we're feeling good, we grow in confidence as we start to lose weight, as we see progress, as we install good habits. It's all well and good. It's those little maybes you need to look out for. It's those times when you're on the road, it's been 7 hours since you've eaten, you pull up at the service station to get some gas, and you're kind of thinking, you see that McDonald's? Okay, you see the Chocky bar in WH Smith's or Marks and Spencer's, and you think, maybe. You don't say yes, but you say maybe. It's a sneaky little devil is maybe, so you need to be careful. So ultimately, what's the solution here? You need to make everything definite. You can't allow room for any maybes. Everything has to be meticulously planned when you're a beginner. Now, this doesn't seem to be the case with intermediates and advanced folks, even though clearly it still happened to me, and it does happen to me every once in a while. I'm far from perfect with this stuff, absolutely. The journey is never ending, my friends. But you need to make everything as definite as possible when you're just getting started. You need to plan as much as you possibly can. Okay, I'm not talking about Tupperware for every meal for the next 5 days, but you must set in your mind potential emergency scenarios and what you're going to do about those scenarios. Okay, let's say you finish a project at work and suddenly rather than leaving work at 5 p.m, it's now 7 p.m. and you're scheduled to get a workout in. How easy is it to pass on that workout at 7 p.m? It's so easy, we've all been there. So instead of going to the gym and doing your 1 hour, your 60-minute planned workout, maybe you just do a half an hour one. Maybe do a half an hour one where you up the intensity, you add in a few drop sets, so you do your 3 main sets, and then you throw in a lighter weight drop set of 10 reps as well to burn out. You increase the intensity, but you shorten the time. So you say to yourself at 7 p.m, okay, yeah, it's a shame I've still got to go to the gym. It's a shame I had to finish this project. At least that's done. I'm going to get myself to the gym. Instead of doing that full hour, I'm going to do the 30 minutes. Does that sound a lot more agreeable? To most of you watching, you're going to be nodding your head, absolutely. So you must constantly be planning for the worst case scenario, having emergency backup plans, taking food with you on road trips, having a dried fruit sort of snack collection at work, just in case somebody does bring in something naughty, making sure you're full and satisfied and you're not skipping meals and therefore more open, saying maybe to temptation a little bit more. These sorts of things we must be meticulously planning. So realize right now that weight loss failure is likely a chain of events, an accumulation of bad planning, poor build-up, poor management of what doesn't seem necessarily to be a mistake at the time, but you later realise, ooh, that was a big boo-boo, just like with my pizza last week. Seriously consider whether you truly want to lose weight. Let me say that again. Seriously consider whether you truly want to lose weight. You're probably thinking, right, this is a video about weight loss. What on earth are you talking about, young man? Well, the reason I say this is because so many people seek out weight loss to mask another problem in their lives, perhaps usually an emotional problem. So ask yourself right now, are you looking to lose weight because you have a deep underlying insecurity? Is there perhaps a story or narrative, a script in your mind that's been maybe omnipresent throughout your life that you're trying to cover up and suppress or numb that feeling in some way, and you think by being slim it's going to allow you to reverse those feelings or numb those feelings? Why is it that you're actually looking to lose weight? The reason why this is so powerful in terms of escaping the crash diet mentality is because the more and more you have this mentality that weight loss is your savior here, the more you believe that weight loss is going to fill a void for you, the more you seek out ways to do it faster and quicker and easier. And frankly, that is not a set of values that are important when it comes to deciding which weight loss strategy to take for long-term success. It's going to take you down a different path entirely in terms of strategy and program selection. So it's really important to get clear on that. Yeah, okay, often weight loss admittedly can be a very superficial thing. A lot of people though, in the same token, are drawn to weight loss because they're scared about perhaps poor health news they've received recently, and so it's an overwhelmingly positive thing to lose weight. But yeah, for some people it can be a very superficial thing. Are you just drawn to it for that reason? Is it through insecurity? Is it through a lack of confidence? Are there other ways, as well as losing weight, that you could address those things? And I think you should find that that will take you into, again, a certain set of behaviors, a certain set of values, a different set of values when it comes to actually assessing which weight loss strategy you should take and avoid those crash diets. Understand that reaching an extrinsic goal will not solve an intrinsic problem. This is huge, guys. You need to recognize that you have the erroneous belief that you're not enough and solve that problem in conjunction with your weight loss efforts, okay? This is really, really big. So many people are using external things to fix internal problems. Okay, so if they've got a problem, they feel maybe a bit anxious right now, a bit stressed, a bit bored, a bit lonely, maybe lacking purpose. A lot of people, the answer is a cigarette. A lot of people, the answer is a bit of weed. A lot of people, the answer is Netflix, Amazon Prime, junk food, alcohol, whatever it is, pornography, sex. That way to sort of numb those negative feelings, get away, maybe distract and soothe those feelings as well. And this is what so many people are doing. They're looking for external problems to fix internal, or external things rather, to fix internal problems. And so the problem is when you need that external validation, there's an undertone there that you're not enough right now and you never will be, because it's always got to be something else external that's fixing you. And so you just stay in this loop, right? By far and away, I think the biggest barrier to a weight loss hopeful is not the standard American diet, not calorie counting, it's not gym bro pseudoscience, it's not the meat industry, it's not food manufacturers. Okay, these macro forces, as I say, they do play a role, they are influential, but it's the inner self. It is the inner self that seems to be people's biggest barrier. It really, really does. And I realised this again last year, at the time I started writing Mind Mastery for Weight Loss, which is my book all about mastering, quite obviously, the ideal mindset for weight loss. And I was just reminded of how important these mental and emotional barriers are, which I've always known. But for me, I see it so clearly in people nowadays that it is these internal stories, narratives, limiting beliefs, lack of patience, their ego in some cases, the superficial relationship with their body. It is these sorts of things that are truly holding people back from health and weight loss success. More than these external macro factors, I think. And it's really hard to analyze this. I'm talking about something, when I talk about mental and emotional barriers, that are quite clear. This is quite clearly a very conceptual conversation to have. And, I'm not a psychologist. But, to me, it's not the standard American diet. It's not calorie counting. It really is the inner self. It's all just a choice. It's all a choice with every food decision you take, every minute you choose to spend of your day. It's all a choice. Are you going to go for these? Are you going to go for these, or are you going to go for the donuts? What are you going to do? These or the donuts? What are you going to do? Netflix or workout? What are you going to do? And it is tough. And sometimes it's not good to be soft. And sometimes you do give yourself too much of a free pass. So question to you, are you justifying your poor choices right now? Oh, it's okay, I've been so good 7 days in a row. I deserve this one donut. I deserve this one piece of cake. Rubbish! You don't deserve it. What you deserve is a slim body. And unless you feel like you actually deserve a slim body, you're always going to have that backwards rationalization. You're always going to say, oh, I deserve this, because that's what you really think you're worth. A lot of people jump on the scales one day at 6 p.m, one day at 3 p.m, maybe the next time they go to the gym, which could be in 5 days' time. Maybe it's 6 a.m. in the morning one day. And all of these things, they might only produce little changes, on the scales, but they can really throw off your readings and measurements. Why? Because at those different points in the day, there'll be a different amount of liquid in your body, different amount of food in your body. There's daily cycles and fluctuations with your weight regardless of what you're actually putting into it anyway. And so these can all kind of throw it off slightly and decrease the accuracy in terms of, not decrease the accuracy, rather they lead to a very wide breadth in terms of how you can weigh in, and we want to narrow that down and make it as accurate and precise as possible. So what we need to do with this first step is really set a time of day when you're going to weigh in. I think there's absolutely no better time than first thing in the morning. As soon as you wake up, to jump on the scales without going to the bathroom, after going to the bathroom, without taking on any liquids, without eating any food, and without clothes. That's really important. That's going to give you a reliable time of day and environment, those conditions, to weigh yourself every single day. So that needs to be your framework in terms of the timing of weighing in. That's so key. Your weight is not your worth. Losing weight might be a wise move for your health, but remember that things like your level of body fat, the circumference of your waist, they don't define you. If you come up weight loss from a place of deficiency, you won't fill the void just by getting slim. By all means lose weight, but also realize your intrinsic value right now. You are enough. Now I know that's very 2019, I know that's very body positive and cliche, and I usually avoid those things because those things can be dangerous ideas. If you've got a serious condition with your health right now, if it's absolutely necessary for you to lose weight, the last thing you need to hear right now is body positive, you are enough, sort of motivational, cliche, cheesy speech. So I'm very wary of that. Yet at the same time, there are so many weight loss hopefuls that really are seeking weight loss as a mode of filling this void, so to speak, of numbing some negative emotion, thinking that it's going to be their savior. Very rarely does it work out like that. So how do we combat these almost superficial feelings of self-worth, that our self-worth is determined by the number on the scale? A couple of things you can do. Number one, you need to have process-oriented goals, okay? So many people, we imagine that the number on the scale, the way we look in the mirror, that is the prize for us. And therefore, all our goals and objectives should be based on a particular number we're trying to hit, a particular gene size, a particular physique that we're imagining in our mind, the flat stomach, the good booty, the ripped abs, whatever it is for us personally, okay? So instead of that, or as well as that rather, more specifically, we need to also have process-related goals that are actually related to, the day-to-day, the process, and they can ground us in that. We can also learn to appreciate, as I say, the rungs of the ladder until we get to those upper echelons, those overarching objectives, let's say. We need to be grounded in the process and appreciate the process as well as the prize. This is so key. So it could be things like staying on track with healthy eating for 30 days, eating solely whole plant foods for the next 7 days. It could be making sure that we do 15 kilometers of mileage every week with our running for the next 4 weeks. Setting these goals, I hope I've made that clear, that are actually related to the process of losing weight rather than the end result itself. This is really powerful. Another thing that's really essential is stop comparing to others. You've got to stop comparing to others, which is made all the more easy, sadly, nowadays with social media. We've got the screens everywhere. We can look up to our favorite role models. Can be really useful to acquire the information that social media allows us to acquire nowadays. When it comes to weight loss, we can go and seek out weight loss teachers, medical doctors, so on and so forth. We can find exercise tutorials on YouTube, online. What's a potential downside of this? A lot of people are constantly comparing themselves to their role models, to their peers, so on and so forth. And it's made, as I say, all the more easy with social media. So if this is happening to you and you're feeling angst and you're feeling less than as a result of this, you have to have a bit of a social media detox. I can't implore you enough. You've got to have a bit of a social media detox. And if you don't do that, at least unfollow those people that you might have looked up to for a period of time. But if constantly looking at their Instagram feed is making you, for instance, feel less than, and you're getting not so much value out of doing that anymore, and you're getting all these negative emotions out of doing it, even if you are getting value out of following that person, if you're also getting negative emotions, come back to them later. Unsubscribe, excuse me, for now. Unfollow them for now. Come back later. If it makes you feel less than, if it makes you feel stressed and anxious about who you are and the path you're on, and detracts from what you're doing, and makes you feel bad about what you're doing and where you are right now, your life, your lifestyle, you've got to cut them out for a bit. You've got to get them out of your immediate field of vision for a bit, your immediate scope of vision, okay? So this is really key. And last of all, stop thinking that you're not enough. Don't believe that something external is going to fix your internal problems. A lot of us are seeking weight loss as a means, as I said at the start, to feel complete out of deficiency, to fill a void in our lives. Don't see it as your savior, because it most certainly isn't that. If there's something wrong internally, there's no reason why you should believe that merely being at your goal dream weight or having your dream physique is suddenly going to magically fix that. So often we feel guilt and we feel shame, we feel embarrassment for the way we've eaten in the past, for mistakes we made last week, for that restaurant meal we had, for the bunch of alcohol we drank at the weekend, even though we're desperate to lose weight right now. Sometimes we can harbour bad feelings about those mistakes for quite a long time. Some people forgive themselves very easily. I think that's something that I've learned to do over time, but again, it's something I've learned to do. What's the danger of this? What's the danger of harbouring this this disappointment with yourself about mistakes just happened, mistakes of the past, or mistakes that have just happened rather? Well, you start to buy into this idea that you're not deserving of success, in my opinion. So a lot of my clients that I've worked with in the past, they have had this notion that because they've never been able to get control of their nutrition in the past, because they've been out of shape for a long time, because, even if it's more recent, because they made a mistake with their nutrition last week and they're really upset about it, because of those things, over time, they don't feel like they are deserving of success. They don't feel like they ever truly deserve a slim body. Because they're harbouring that guilt and that resentment towards themselves, they don't feel quite as entitled to one day being slim as somebody that didn't feel that guilt. There are going to be these natural, they are very normal, or they usually are at least very normal, fluctuations day to day. And so to counteract those things, because it'd be very easy to therefore look at a perceived bad day, which could just be a very natural fluctuation, think what we're doing is not working, throw in the towel altogether, or jump to a new program or something. It can be very easy to do those things. I see people do this stuff time and time again. They think they're not losing weight, then they give up, or they change to another strategy, even though it's just a normal fluctuation with their weight, and they were judging all of their progress on this one weigh-in. Craziness. So what we need to do to counterbalance this is actually average a set number of weigh-ins. So giving you a great piece of actionable advice here, this is actually something that I teach my one-on-one clients. I get them to weigh in on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays every week, and nothing else. Just Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, and Friday morning. They take a note of all those measurements, and then they actually average those three numbers. So they total them all up, they total those three measurements up, then divide by 3 to spit out the average. And this actually gives you then a weekly average that you can measure to next week's weekly average as well. That weekly average of those three measurements of the second week's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Hope that makes sense. I know I'm just throwing a load of dates at you, days of the week at you here, but hopefully that makes sense. So that way there's a greater level of accuracy going into the numbers you're taking because you're using an averaging system. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. The problem is when you do this, you feel like you don't deserve to lose weight. You're reinforcing that idea, that you are not entitled to a slim body when you feel sorry for yourself all the time. It's this state of victimhood that does you no good. You have to take the mantle here. You got to take ownership. You got to take responsibility. A lot of these things are under your control. So if you're feeling sorry for yourself, like you're doing everything and you're not losing weight, doesn't matter. You've got to keep believing it's in your, and you might be true to a certain degree, but you might have a medical condition, there might be something else going on, you might be at a certain age in your life which makes it harder to lose weight, but at the same time, you've got to really buy into this idea that everything's under your control. The opposite is so disempowering. The opposite is like, I can't do anything, I can't control this. Maybe there's an argument for a middle ground. But I believe you've got to get staunch about this stuff. You've got to get that conviction. You've got to have this inner strength that you believe you're going to dominate here everything you possibly can until you get to your weight loss goal. You've got to have that slim body mindset. This is so key. So stop feeling sorry for yourself. You can't allow yourself to feel like a victim. It's so disempowering. When you start to do that, you reinforce this idea that you don't deserve weight loss success. This can kill your results very, very quickly. Take on the mantle, take responsibility, act like you can control everything, and that's going to drive you forward with so much force. It's going to blow your mind. You're going to look back in 6 months and go, wow, I can't believe what I used to say. I can't believe how weak I used to be. It's a game changer. It really is. Keep going and trust the process. So many people, when it comes to these health pursuits, they are only flirting with what they're doing. They very rarely go all in. They very rarely get committed over the long term and stay consistent over time, admittedly. It's so easy. It's fairly easy for a complete beginner, frankly, to follow a new diet, to follow an exercise program for a week, for 2 weeks. We can do that, especially when the motivation is really high here in January. We can feel really great, really positive. We can be in the right headspace at the turn of the year. And it's very easy to go and execute on those kind of first couple of weeks, let's say. But what then happens after that is people often hit this kind of hump where things start to get tough, where they start to have to be really disciplined to stay on track, where most importantly, the motivation begins to fade away. And they're really left in this state whereby jumping on the scales, seeing a bad weigh in, or having one binge eating session and not kind of bouncing back from it in the correct way. One little mistake really can throw them off course, versus perhaps when they're only a couple of days in, if they'd made one mistake at that point, the motivation was still sky high. It was all kind of outweighed by these positive feelings about taking control of their health. And as soon as that, as I say, motivation kind of fades away, as it naturally does, motivation is a very fleeting thing. So as soon as that fades away, that's when these challenges and curveballs can upset us more and more, make us more and more reactive, make us want to quit more and more. We're more likely to throw in the towel during, as I say, this hump phase. Keep going and trust the process. This is so, so key. What is the process? Well, really, it's your body of work over time. It's the accumulation, the series of these good habits that build up in time. So it's your long-term game plan to reach a certain outcome, a series of actions, as I say, that lead to weight loss. So here's a little thing you can do right now. Take a brief pause and think about the last time you didn't stay the course. Think about the last health pursuit you had, whether it was strictly weight loss, maybe it was a new gym routine, a new exercise plan, maybe you'd started running. Think about the last time you kind of, quote unquote, chucked in the towel and didn't really stay the course. Recall that in your mind right now. Remember, this is a really good point that I shared with my clients recently. Remember, it's not necessarily the program that fails you, but more so, in many cases, your consistency and your adherence, your lack of sustained, what should we say, action. Realize that success is as much about who you are as it is what you do. Now, don't get me wrong, we still need to know strategies and tactics here. We need to know about nutrition. We need to know what sorts of foods to eat. We need to know about which sorts of exercise are best for us to lose weight, about optimal sleeping routines, so on and so forth. We need the strategy. But when you start getting your identity right, when you start rather embodying the identity of somebody that's already slim, that's already disciplined, that's got control of their habits, it's amazing how that takes your commitment to the next level. We have all of these stories, all of this programming, all of these narratives in our mind, in many cases spanning from our childhood, that can really hold us back, that cause us to be inconsistent, that cause us to doubt ourselves and self-sabotage. Perhaps we got picked last at sports class. Perhaps there was a relationship we were in 5 years ago where there was lots of unhealthy habits in, and that's still ingrained in us now. Perhaps it's your comfort zone in a strange way to be overweight, and therefore you can't change it. You can't ever be consistent because it feels like your comfort zone, and leaving that to get slim is a really scary thought for you. You really fear your own success. We can have a lot of these twisted stories, as crazy as this sounds. And so to realize that it's as much about who you are as your strategy, as important as the strategy is, it can really free you. It can allow you to actually execute on that strategy a great deal more consistently because your commitment goes up, because of the way you perceive yourself, your conception of yourself goes through the roof, and your conviction then follows.